Hi, and welcome to VFX Tutors. I'm Josh, and in this tutorial we're going to be continuing with our hard surface model. So in our previous ones we've created our chainsaw bar, and we made our chainsaw blade. The blade wasn't particularly a very long tutorial, it was fairly simple, but now we're going to sort of make some nuts and bolts to sort of make this fit. So this is kind of how I like to work. I like to be able to work through the logical process of stuff. So we need to create some nuts and bolts, and we're going to use them throughout most of the model, but we're going to have to probably make some variants as well. So I'm just going to go to my orthographic view, front. I'm just going to view, image plane, and import image. I'm just going to go to my reference, and I'll update the reference files. So where is it? We got some nuts and for this guy. He's pretty happy with his chainsaw blade. You see, I've updated it with the switches and stuff. Where is it? We've got some nuts there. So let's actually start. Got screws and bolts in there. Okay, so we got our bolt here. So I'm just bringing this in so because I kept opening up the windows, and every time I click off wire it hides it. So we've got a nut and bolt here, and we can sort of see this is based from the hexagon shape, and we've got some multiple different types of shapes here. We've got a circular top going down into sort of flat edges. And we've got this screw bit, and we probably don't have to model this all as one because we're not going to see what's underneath. We'll only really see what's going out the other end. So what I like to do is if I start with a cylinder, let's organize this so it's not a so put image plane up there. Just going to hide the blade and the bar. And I'm just going to bring this over to here so I can keep this on my side. So I'm just going to rotate this round 90 degrees. It depends on how much detail you really want to put into this. We can get it pretty good. So with a cylinder, it's already round, so we can go to our attributes editor and reduce our subdivisions axis until we've got the correct shape. So it's 6 sides. And we've already got our sort of main bolt shape. So what we want to do is, if we want to keep this sort of shape, we actually need to, if we go 12, because we want this round shape first. But we can flatten these edges out. So because the reason why I've doubled it is because we've got our basic shape, and now what I'll do actually, if I Control D and duplicate that, pull it off to the side, just so I can keep it as reference, and double that to 12, I've now got my round shape. So I'm just going to call this my bolt for now, and just leave that as access my reference. So I'm just gonna zero that out now. So if you can see what I'm gonna sort of do is I've got my round shape, and it's the exact equal nut. So the hexagon 6 and my round is 12, so it's exactly the same. So I can scale this down. I'm just going to go to my X-ray so I can see it. I'm going to sort of roughly guesstimate this sort of distance just by eye. And you can see we've sort of roughly got it correct there. So now what I want to do is, because I've got this round shape, Now we need to keep this round shape and turn it into a hexagon as well. So I'm actually going to go into my perspective, because I'm not going to line up to this perfectly. I'm just using this as reference. So I'm actually going to just go back to my X-ray and turn that off. Just going to pull these out, scale it to roughly what a bolt sort of head be like. We can change this afterwards. So if I go to my panels and orthographic front, if I go to my modeling toolkit, select all my faces, so I can now select all my faces, hold Control, and you should get the minus, and select all the middle. So now I've got all the outside ones selected. If I press Control E, and all I'm going to do, I'm just going to scale this out until I can't see the hexagon underneath. I'm going to go to my vertices, select the top, press W, and snap it to the edge here, and snap it to the edge here. Obviously I can't do that for all of them, so what I can do is just using my X and Y axis. If you want, you can turn your X-ray on to help as well, to sort of align it with the geo underneath. I say it doesn't have to be perfect, so I imagine it's probably not. I imagine they're probably pretty perfect, but a little bit of sort of discrepancy in the shape is always good. So I'm just pulling these up and flattening off these edges. Cool. So now you can see how we've got this round bit on top, and now we've changed this to our sort of hex bolt shape just by using the two pieces of geo as reference. So what I will do first, I'm actually going to delete all this middle bit now. And I'm going to double click on my edge and Control E, press R to scale. I'm just going to scale this in now. So what I will do, I'll just do it like this for now. Then I'm going to hold Shift, right click and fill hole. Now I can, let's just hide that. So now I've filled that hole. Just going to go to my multi-cut. Cut through here, press enter. Cut through here, press enter. Because we don't want to keep these triangles, because the triangles will mess with our smoothing later on. So I'm just going to create these edges through here. And what you can do, you can go to your object mode, sculpting, select relax, and you can just relax these. Because we will add another edge loop in there. Let's just make our cool. Just turn our X-ray off. Let's relax that a little bit more. Cool. So now if we look at the shape, we've got our round shape and our sort of flat shape. So if I double click on this edge, I can actually just push this down now.
If you don't want it too much, otherwise it will start going a bit weird. Because it's only a subtle amount. It's not a huge amount. It's just enough to sort of make that edge there. If we double click on here, we can Control E, scale that in, and Control E. And we don't have to make the whole bolt because we're not going to see it through. So now if we smooth that now, we can sort of see we've achieved nothing. So now we need to figure out how we can, because we've got to keep this sharp edge here whilst also keeping these sharp edges. And also I forgot, actually, when you look at this, there is sort of a curve on it as well. So it does look like if we select our vertices, select the corner ones, they look like they curve down a bit more. I think maybe we've pushed the initial ones down too far, so I'm going to select all my vertices now on that edge, and I'm just going to push that up. I feel that's a bit more correct. Cool. So let's go through and see what we can do with sharpening search. So I'm going to go through and try the bevel first. So I'm going to select this edge loop, this one. And the thing is with bevel, you have to select everything that you're going to do, otherwise you'll create funny sort of edges as well. And so we also, because we have to sharpen this as well, so this is where it starts to get a little bit tricky, because now we're adding edge loops to things that we don't really want things to be beveled. But if we look at everything, we've got these sharp edges now, and we're going to have to bevel these to keep the loop. So if we bevel it now, if we add extra segment on it, before we go any further, let's go shading, wireframe shading off. So we've pressed 3 on it now, let's see how it looks. So the problem is with this now, we've got edges here, which in our reference we don't, they're smooth. So we're going to have to try and figure out how we can keep these sharp edges, but not create these sort of ridges. So I'm just going to undo all that. So what we can do is do something like this. So I'm going to select these edges. Just going to Control E. I'm going to offset it by 0.02. Do the same here. I'm just going to go bevel 0.02. Oh. Why is that? Oh. That's what I'm doing wrong. Why am I doing that? Let's Control E. I don't know what I was doing then. 0.02. It's like, why is it not working? No, I was doing the completely wrong thing. 0.02. Press G to repeat. 0.02. Cool. So now we've kind of extruded these in. If we press 3 now, we can see that we've actually created something that's actually pretty close already. We just need this sort of sharp edge around here, and we need to fix this bit around the bottom. So if I double click this edge loop here, we can now bevel this because it keeps it all within the edge loop. If I just go to object mode and press 3 now, we can see if we look at our reference, we're getting pretty close with that, although I feel that maybe we've done it. If we go to our attribute editor, change our bevel to maybe a little bit softer. Cool. So we've got these sharp edges, but if we look, we've got a pretty good looking bolt already. Like, this could be a version of a bolt, but we're not looking for that particular one. We need to sharpen this edge, so if we go to multi-cut, and what we're doing here is kind of a mix of beveling and fencing. So if we press 3, and just go to our object mode, we can see that we're getting this sort of bolt shape now. And we've tightened up these corners here. So now our next thing to do is to fix this bottom part. So we're going to multi-cut again. And if we press 3, we can see we're having the same problems here at the bottom. So now let's go to our object mode. We can now see we've created this bolt. And we've got these sort of soft edges. We've got the mix of hard surface here, and we haven't got any sort of... Ooh, what's happened here? It looks like we may have... I'm not doing too well on keeping this... So if you accidentally extrude something, you can select all the edges, press Control Delete, and that will delete all the edges and the vertices. So now our final thing that we need to do, I think we just undid that, so multi-cut, and let's make an edge loop around there. Press 3. We've now got a nice sharp bolt with the sharp edges and the sort of corners around here. We have got some funky bits here. But maybe even let's put a fence around there. And you can see we've got a pretty nice looking bolt. We just need to tighten this bit around the bottom. Cool. And we're pretty much done with the bolt. So you can, if you want to, just we don't need to model the sort of these bits because we don't see it. We'll probably model them when we see it on that side. So let's look at this bolt, sorry, the nut now. So what we can do, we can probably just duplicate this. And the nut will probably be approximately the same size. So let's, but it's going to be more symmetrical. So what we can do is I try to reuse as much of the model as possible. So I'm just going to make an edge loop down the middle, select those edges, hold on, scale them. So now I'm going to delete all the polygons on that side. So now we've got this, we've got top of our bolt here, and we've trimmed it. So now all we need to do is, let's just flip this around for reference. So a hole, so we now actually need to, because we smoothed this on top, probably was a bit preemptive. Let's go to our faces, and we can delete that. So I do like to use other pieces of geometry as reference. I'm just going to press insert and align my pivot point to this far flat side. Hold V. I'm just going to snap it to that part. So now I'm just going to go to my modeling toolkit, select my vertices, and I'm just going to snap them. So if you go to your X-ray, see what I'm doing. So I'm going to hold V, snap them, and bring them back to their round. Or you could just delete them, then re-extrude it. It's entirely up to you. I like to reuse geometry as much as I can. Cool. So now we have our whole back and round. So I'm just going to scale this up now, because albeit it's not tight on there, so it's probably like Control E, change my thickness and offset. So it's quite sensitive, so I'm just going to press R. I just use my scale tool, translate tool to sort of bring this sort of edge in. And because we're not, if we were doing this like super close up, we'd probably want to model all this thread in as well. But I think for this case, we can get away with just doing this sort of outer part. So now if I Control D and duplicate that, this is kind of how it might always sort of. You don't even have to, you can just minus 90 degrees it and bring it back.
So if I press insert, hold V, in fact I'm going to delete it because I've noticed that these are probably not as rounded. So I'm just going to select these edges. I'm just going to reduce some of the roundedness. Just press insert V and I change my pivot point back to this edge. Just Control D and that's 90. So now that's flipped on the spot. I might have moved a vertex by accident there. So now let's go select both our meshes and go to mesh and combine. So we've got these ones that we may have accidentally moved. Just going to snap those, use target weld, sorry, and weld them together. Then I'm going to select all of them, go to edit mesh and merge. So now if I press 3, they should all be nicely merged. And just looking at our reference, this is a much smaller, the sort of flat gap between there and this sort of edge is much smaller. So what I can do is go to my orthographic front X-ray. Just select the other one, so we'll match it up as well. Because I should have done that before duplicating it, but I didn't. It's fine. See, everyone makes mistakes. Don't worry about doing things perfectly first time. It's a massive lie that exists. You see a lot of these modeling tutorials and they just go through and it's, I just leave my mistakes in, so I'm just going to bevel that. I'm going to roughly bevel it to the same size. I'm going to double click this edge and double click that edge, then select bridge, and then go bevel. Add the segments in. Now if I press 3, I've got this bolt, which is looking pretty good. So now if we just can sort of see how this is going to work now. So we won't be modeling the thread in, but we will make something to sort of cheat it. Cool. So we're almost done with our first bolt variant, I guess, and now we're just finish it off doing the thread. So to do the thread, I'm just going to go up to my Create tab, and I'm going to go to my Polygon primitives, because I use a lot of the poly modeling stuff up here, and we don't have a lot. We just have the basic sphere, cube, cylinder, cone, donut, and plane. A couple of these special sort of harmonic polygons, but I want to go to my create polygon primitives, and I want to create a helix. So what this has done is it's basically made sort of like this sort of spring shape, and you can sort of see what we can do with it. Sort of looks like we've made curly pasta straight away, and you can animate all this as well. So you have all the spring sort of settings, and you can see we've got all the settings to sort of do whatever you want. So I'm just going to undo that. So I want to make some thread. And this is kind of, if I'm doing anything that I want to make some, this is probably overkill for this, but it'll be fun to do. It's these tiny little details that really make things. So I want to make the thread, and obviously this is way too big, so I'm going to change the coils first. I'm just going to set this to maybe 16. Width to 0.1, or maybe just 1 for now. My radius 0.1. Do that again, 0.005. So we can see we're getting a really tiny coil now. So we don't need to do all of this. We only need to do this. What we can do some. We'll do enough that's a little bit extra, so we can change the sort of. We don't have the same height, because if we do it all one height, it'll be quite frustrating that we didn't do if we need it for a little bit longer. So I'm just going to keep my subdivision coils quite high so I can visualize it. I'm going to change my subdivision axis to 4. So if I actually change this back up to this thing a bit higher, you can sort of see where I'm going with this now. So, because obviously it's we can make it into springs, but if I bring it down to a 4, my subdivision to 4, we can create these sort of spikes. Well, the sharp edges, sorry. And you can see how we're going to create this thread. So let's just get that out of the way. And let's sort of look at our reference and see what we can sort of get the right sort of size. So this is looking pretty close already, actually, just as a rough guess. Cool, so I'm actually pretty happy with that. So obviously this is would be a nightmare to work with all these edges, so let's bring this down to 6. So now if we press 3 and smooth that, we can see we still get a nice round circle. Which just means now we've got way less polygons to work with. So what we can do is try to get the best way to do this first. Let's go to our let's get this tighter so they're just touching. So I'm just changing my radius so they're almost on. So they're pretty much on top of each other now. Because I don't really want to go through and weld or attach all these manually. So now I've got them so close I can I can just use the merge. So I'm going to go to my orthographic front. I'm just going to delete all these inside edges.
because I don't want them. I only want the outside parts. Oh. So go to my perspective. So now I should have this completely hollow shape, which we've got this sort of curve now, this sort of coiling shape. So if I go to my vertices, select them all. So if I press 3 now, you'd see you can sort of tell that's not stitched. So now if I press select them all, go edit mesh and merge, I can change my threshold. Nothing's changed, so they definitely would have welded. So now they should have. Cool, it's done it that time. It didn't do it the first time, but for some reason it didn't do it. So yeah, they're now welded. So if I press 3, we can now see we've lost our sharpness, and we've got this sort of ribbed thing, which doesn't look very nice. So before we do any of this sort of fixing any of these sort of sharp edges, let's fix this top part and make this, because if we can't really see it in that picture, but I think everyone knows what a bolt looks like. Yeah, sort of. But we need to bring this in. We need to make that sort of sloping part so it screws in. So I'm just going to bring these end ones up. Sort of make this, press F so it's centered around it. So I'm just going to make that sloping part so it screws in. We don't have to do it on loads, just enough so it's So what I'll do is, this is at a really weird angle, I don't know why, so I'm going to have to rotate this round because my viewport is not liking that angle and it's being a bit funny with it. So what I want to do, I want to make sure that this is flat by the time it gets to there. So I'm just going to go around and make this one flat. Make sure that's evenly spread. Because when I sharpen this, I don't want any sort of weird, strange stuff to happen. Because I'm going to have to add some extra geometry in here as well. Just pull that in. Just making that slope up from the flat. Like I say, you probably could get away with this in a texture, but it's fun to learn how to sort of do it. So if you're doing one really close up, you'd probably want to spend more. If you're doing a really close up, you'd probably want to spend a bit more time on it than this, but you should be able to get a pretty nice looking one. So if I press 3 now, we can see we've got that nice curving bit. Maybe even scale them all in a little bit. Cool. So our next problem is that we've got this. We've got a load of extra geometry up here. We don't want we don't want to add an edge loop to fix this, because it's going to completely mess up our sort of cylindrical shape. So we're going to have to figure out how we're going to fix this. So first of all, let's select this edge loop. Apart from these two, and Control E. I'm actually going to use my scale, and I'm going to scale these in. I'm going to keep scaling in until this is far enough away from the edge. I'm going to go to my vertice, select target weld, and weld that one. So we've not fixed our problem yet. I'm just removing it away from this edge, because we're going to have to add some sort of loop in there. So I'm just going to do that again. Control E, scale. Because we're going to have to do some stuff that's probably going to make it a little bit funky at the top, but I don't want it to affect there. Cool, so yeah, so if we select this edge and this edge, can I bridge that? You can see we've got quite a large. So if I press 3 now, we've got quite a big polygon that's being stretched over it. So I'm just going to select all this, and we're going to have a problem that we've got. No, we're not. If we just go to fill hole now. So one of our problems will be is actually none. So either way we're going to have, no, let's do it. So we've got this sort of weird shape here, so we need to make sure that we cut across here. So now when we press 3, we've got this sort of pretty soft screw shape. So I'm pretty happy with the top. Maybe even we can press B for soft select. So soft select allows to sort of add a little bit more, but my soft select's set really high at the moment, so I'm just going to double click on my tool settings and change my fall off to a lot lower. It's got 0.1 probably. I'm just going to pull this up so it's not going to a complete flat end. We're going to scale it, and that's changed my fall off again. So maybe 0.3. Scale the whole lot, so I've got. You see how it's affecting. It's not just affecting the polygons I've picked, it's pulling all these other ones in. Cool. So if you press B and turn that off, if I press 3 now, I've got this nice sort of sloping part. So I'm not too bothered about this end because it's going to be hidden, so we can leave that open. So I'm just going to double click these edges. And you see it's sort of made. So if I beveled that now, you see that we've created something quite bad here. So I want to undo that. So I'm just going to go around and select all those faces. Control E.
tiny an extremely small. That's a bit too small, maybe. And you can see that it's not broken, and it's not made any odd shapes. So if I press 3 now, I'm starting to get this sort of more sharpened bolt shape. So if I do Control E again, do my offset 0.004. I just want to check that I'm not getting any. It's getting a bit nasty up here, but as long as it's not doing too much damage, it should be alright, because we can smooth that out. So now you can see we've got this bolt shape. It's done something really horrible on the top. So what we can do, sculpting, relax. Let's relax all this stuff on the top. Just going to relax the stuff on the edges. Just go around, just being very careful with the edges. There is a possibility that something else is going on here. So now if I press 3, we've now got no weird stuff going on top. Well, there is some sort of weird geometry, but what we can do, we just keep relaxing it. You don't want to do too close to the edge, because then you'll start undoing everything that you've just done. So be very careful with how much you actually do this. We can even try a bit smooth. And if it's a bit too strong, my strength is up really high. Change the brush size. You can sort of just relax it enough to sort of, you're not really using the sculpt to sculpt it, but we're kind of fixing this bad geo on top, or just all those extrusions that we made. Just let's relax that. Cool. I don't mind that it's not like perfectly flat.
If I press 3 now, we now see we've got this sort of bolt top. And if I just rotate that back, I can put that in there. Scale that up. Maybe probably. I think that's probably alright for what we need. But we're never going to see it, like, in reality we're never going to see it close enough to even see any of it, but it's nice to be able to have it. So I'm actually going to leave that at the bottom. It doesn't bother me that that's kind of like this, because we're never going to see it. So some weird stuff going on here. Let's delete that. I'm just going to mod cut there. Cool. So when we look at this, we just leave that like that. And we can change the amount that's poking out. Cool, so the next thing to do is just do something really simple, and that's make like a washer or something like that. So this is not going to be the most difficult model to do, so let's go to create polygons, and we can go to pipe. This is something that we haven't used yet. And you can see it's pretty much made us a washer already. So I'm just going to rotate this 90 degrees. And just going to scale it to what a sort of washer would be. And that's pretty much. In fact, let's get to X-ray so I can see through without moving it. And just bevel it. So we've now got a washer. Let's just select all this, go to polymodding, freeze it, delete all the history, and let's Control G and group it. And we'll just call this bolt V01. Cool, so let's unhide our chainsaw. Let's hide that. Let's hide all the bits. Unhide our blade. What are these bits here? Spaces. So I'm just gonna. I keep doing this, and let's hide that image plane for now. I keep duplicating this and unduplicating it, but we'll make another variant of this. I think we'll just modify the one that we have. Where is the... So let's bring back our sword blade. Because we need to cover this, remember, so... Somewhere I have moved it. So I think I moved it because of that. And we can always adjust this if we're, because I'm doing a lot of this based off not having to paint anything out, because we can rotate a lot of the sword out anyway. But we'll have to do another test. You know how we when we did the first prop sword and we placed it up against the plate and just had a little look, and it's always good to sort of refer against that. So we've got our first bolt. And if we let's have a look at it. It's obviously quite a large bolt. So we probably want to scale that down. Something like that. Control D, let's add a washer that side because you want to do it properly, don't you? It's always good to have washers so it doesn't wear away at the actual thing. So you can see actually how nice that looks already. And if you want, you can put it on a sort of an axis so it's not perfectly round, straight with it. So if I just go to my wireframe and shaded, because I'm just going to duplicate these now, but later on, when we've finished it, we will UV it once. We'll UV it once, then reduplicate it. It's just you don't want to do UV multiple things at the same time. So let's go to our X-ray. The reason why I kind of like modeling stuff like this, because it's possible that you could make this for real. That'd be quite interesting, right? So I've added those bolts. I think that's probably, and this can be completely up to your likings. You don't have to have them perfectly spaced. Oh, maybe even on that one. Even though we're modeling the high-res version of this, we're still concepting it and stuff. So it's always nice just to play around with things. Like I say, at the end of it, this is going to be, if you're doing it from a client concept, that's a little bit different because then you have to make it like it is. But for this instance, we're sort of making something that we want, so feel free to sort of mix it up a bit. But so we're getting pretty, we've not done loads, but we've got some kind of cool stuff. We've done these sort of
these are kind of all the same bolt, but we'll do some different ones. So imagine like if you found a load of bolts, they're probably a lot of the similar ones, so cool. So I think for those bolts were pretty good. I'm not going to add. We can add some washers in there a little bit later, but at this present time we're sort of just modeling the things we definitely need, then figuring out the rest. So we've got this now attached to our samurai sword or chopped blade. So the next thing I kind of want to do is figure out how it's going to really work, because previously I had this set up, so this is going to have to change. So what I was thinking, because the chain is going to go around there and around here. It's a bit crude, but it gives you the good idea. And it's going to be the same on the other side. So we have to figure out these new positions for stuff. Because the closer we get this to sort of as realistic as possible, it's just going to work so much better. So my next plan would be to, so I'm just gonna, so like I said, I'm just concepting this as I go along, as I build things. So I'm just gonna make a cylinder. Just gonna rotate that. So what I'm gonna have to do, I'm gonna have to make a sprocket. I'm gonna have to make some gearing here, I think. Because this has to be... So if I hide this, hide my motors, hide this. So at the moment, it has to go like this. The chain has to go. I know, I'm just scaling really nasty. So that's my chain. What is this here? Oh, that's my old. So I think this is what actually I will need to. So this will need to. Will it? We can bring it out a bit, I think. And let's delete that, that's gone nasty. I'll do that for now. So we're going to need some sort of sprocket here and some sort of sprocket here. And I think that we will Control D. Because I'm also we're gonna have to make some extra bits probably. So we're gonna have to make a hole through the blade here. So imagine the chain is like this.
Probably would have been easier if I just did this with a curve at the start, but let's delete that. So we're actually slightly redesigning how this is going to be powered now. Well, I kind of knew this was going to happen just because it happens. And this, I like to try and make it work properly. So now we have this sort of, if we unhide our motors, we can still keep, we will need to figure out so we could, why is that one intersecting that one? So that'll have to come down. It's a slight redesign. We can have it pushed back. Then we can have another. We have another sprocket. That then powers from this one. So we'll have to properly figure out how we're going to attach this. So if we've got a sprocket there, let's hide the battery brackets. Because at the moment, if you had them wired with the polarity going the correct way, at this current, this would be turned that way. So the chains would be turning opposite ways. Would be really nasty. Like that would be worse. Instead of having the chains saws blades going both the same way, but one going one way and one going the other way, that could be quite interesting. So what would happen if we had both motors on the top? And I think what we'll do next is make this sprocket and the fixings. So the next thing we'll do is the sprocket and the bearings, because we're going to need them then. After that, I think we'll start on the motor, because then once we have the motor, we can figure out the bracket. So for this tutorial anyway, we're pretty much done. Let's hide this. yeah, we're getting there. We've made some nice additions to it. So yeah, in the next tutorial we'll do this sprocket and figure out the sort of position a bit more. So if you enjoyed this tutorial, hit that like button and subscribe for more like this.